What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. We're opening up the room just a minute or two early here to give everyone a chance to get in and get settled before the big show. Frank, John, I hope you guys are well. It's great to see you.
How's it going, guys? The
Welcome.
dedicated crew. Hi,
Yeah, wherever
Frank.
you're joining us from the world, let us know. Again, we just opened this up a minute or two early, give everyone a chance to get in, find a great seat, get settled. We're going to get started in just a minute here. From the Netherlands, Frank. Very cool.
Oh, nice. Verstaan jy as ek Afrikaans praat, Frank? I'm Afrikaans. We should understand each other a little bit.
There's some crossover with the Dutch, huh?
Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, there you go. He just fired
Oh,
back to you.
Afrikaans. One day I'll do a show in Afrikaans, see what the other people think about that.
Yeah, there you go. A special edition, Profits at Noon.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I see it is now noon on the hour. So, welcome everyone. We opened the room just a minute or two early to give everyone a chance to get in and get settled. So, welcome to the Wednesday edition of Ninjacators' new weekly live event, Profits at Noon. We're going live 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at noon Eastern Time. So, we'll show you all the levels that we are stalking for entry, and we'll steer you clear of any traps or news bombs that could be waiting around the corner. So, you're going to see lots of cool live analysis, and in addition to that, we will guide you through what we call our levels to lock. So, these are just levels that we're keeping an eye on, things we're stalking, and you'll get to stay with us in action to see how all of this plays out. So we do encourage you to join us for follow-up sessions. For instance, we'll be live again tomorrow at noon Eastern. So obviously the Fed decision coming up here at 2 p.m. Eastern. We won't get the chance to react to that just yet today, but tomorrow we will be on top of that. So please join us again tomorrow. I see we have a few more people trickling in. Welcome, Peter and Monica. It's great to see you. I hope you're well. We are firing up today's Profits at Noon session. My name is Nate. I am co-hosting these sessions with our very own Richard Krugel. So I'm going to pass the reins over to him. He's going to jump right into today's analysis, the 6 futures markets that we cover. We'll leave a little room for Q&A, and then I'm just going to show you guys very quickly at the end of the session what we've got going on the Ninjacators calendar, including a live webinar we have later this afternoon. So I'll have an exclusive webinar invite link for you. But again, I am going to pass the reins here to Richard Krugel, and he can fire this session up.
Thanks, Nate, and welcome everybody. Again, a lot of familiar faces, quite a few new ones here, actually. So welcome. Thanks for joining me and Nate here today. As always, I'll be going through the ES, the NQ, the Y, and the Russell, gold and crude oil. Show you my unique analysis combined with the levels to lock, which you'll see in my charts. Today might not be too long of a session. We were going to have someone actually join us from Ninjacators. He couldn't make it today. He's going to be joining us on every alternating Wednesday, I believe it is. And yeah, so just heading into today's Fed rate decision at 2 p.m. and also obviously the 2:30 follow-up. We now have the press conference afterwards will be closely watched by traders. Are we going to see a lot of fireworks or not? I don't know. I've got a bit of a bad feeling about it, but who knows? I might be wrong. But anyway, it is what it is. We'll look at the charts, see what I see. Like I said, anything can happen today during today's Fed meeting. Even the meeting afterwards, or the rate decision and the meeting afterwards, sorry. So just got to be wary of that. I'll definitely not be trading during those times. So just be careful if you are, and just be aware of that. Right, before I dive into the analysis, as always, just a quick reminder, all information in today's session is provided for educational purposes only, and it's not an offer or recommendation to trade futures, stocks, options, or Forex. All right. Hopefully you can see my screen right there. A lot of lines going on here. If you're new to these sessions, I'll quickly go over what these mean. Got horizontal lines. I've also got these angular lines, which is my market geometry, mostly pitchforks that I also draw on my charts. Again, going over the ES, the NQY, Russell, gold, and crude oil. I'm just going to disappear off screen here for a while. and I'll be back if you guys got any questions to ask. As always, just drop any questions you have there in the chat box, guys. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you when I'm done. All right. So we've been looking at this pretty strong decline that started here at the beginning of Feb. Simply drew a standard pitchfork sloping to the downside using the three most prominent anchor points prior to this very strong and volatile decline that we've obviously seen. Along the way, during these profit to loss sessions, we were looking at previous areas of support. We had this area over here where we looked at resistance. What a beautiful sort of tick right into that area that I've marked over there, and we've seen a hell of a decline to the downside. Must be pretty honest with you guys, and this started here around about, when was this, on the 5th or the 6th of March? 6th. Actually, during, or this actually week formed as we were doing a profits at noon session. Only expected a sort of a corrective move with price to move back up again. But then we also started having all these issues with this Silicon Valley Bank, recently Credit Suisse, that's been, going bankrupt and been bought out. So a lot of volatility in the markets, very strong declines, and then price nearly reached a lower median line of this pitchfork that's been on my chart for a pretty long while at the moment, right? So then price slowly been building its way up. Again, looking at the ES here, it's on a 4-hour chart. And I mentioned yesterday that it's starting to look like we're building up in 3 waves, or sets of 3 waves, should I say. Beautiful 3-wave move there. Another one over there. Oops, let me just stop that where that is. And you can also see price reaching this this median line sloping to the downside again. Again, this has not been drawn after the fact. It was here on my chart for a substantial amount of time. And just showing you how well these angular lines basically contain price and acted as support and resistance. In this case, resistance. Price moved all the way down. And I was saying, you see these purple lines that I have on my chart here, the lower one at 3,897.25 and the upper one at 4,009.25. These I draw in on my charts just this past Monday. And I was saying that we got to watch these levels, because either potentially, I would say, I can't really obviously be 100% sure what the markets will do, especially on a fetch rate decision day. But I was saying from a pattern perspective, it does look like these 3-wave moves to the upside could potentially be the start of a leading diagonal, which could potentially do this, sometimes end, move lower again without breaking this previous low, and then we get another strong move back to the upside. Now, that was the thinking if price were to break above 4,009.25. The only thing we haven't seen just yet is another clear 3-wave move. Maybe this happens and we see another one later. If that does happen, I mean, sometimes it might even be a little move over here. And the market doesn't always obviously play out according to, or give you the most best looking patterns, to be dead honest. Then, we could still see a decline soon, and that I'll treat as corrective in nature. Right. The other thing was, and this was, I had this zone over here on Monday, and I was saying if price should break above that, that will actually be the first time that price breaks out of this upper line using those 3 anchor points that I've drawn, starting in Feb to this low, I think probably on, when was this, the 10th or something? Yeah, to that high on the 14th. So you can see resistance, resistance, and finally a break up to the upside. Also breaking above that line, potentially meaning that my thinking that a leading diagonal is still on the way could potentially still be the case. Now, again, today's Fed rate decision could potentially throw a spanner in the works, but I'm still dealing with a bullish scenario here. Price did not break this level, so I'm going to delete that. It was either or, breaking up to confirm that that leading diagonal is still underway or getting close to coming near to end, or price breaking that without breaking to a new high. That didn't happen, to confirm that this was just some sort of a corrective move. So that's my thinking. Price already made a nice substantial move to the upside. It opened above today's pivot point at 4,021. I've been hovering a little bit sideways, obviously, as traders are waiting for the rate decision. And then we've got the R1 at 4060 to the upside. We also have this upward sloping median line here, which I could potentially delete. But quite often, even if you leave them on a chart and price leaves the boundaries of these lines, they quite often come back and retest them. So this might be an area of resistance, right where that median line is sloping to the upside, about 4057 and a half, to where that R1 is at 4060. Now, if you're new to the session, you'll also see that we have what we call our projected ranges, which in sort of a light brownish color, we've got 3 of them to the upside. This is our proprietary indicator here at Ninjacators, and it's based on previous days' volatility. And quite often, if you join these sessions, again, if you're new, price to a very high degree either moves towards them, finds support and resistance, to a very high degree. I mean, even during that stage, where was this one? I was trying to find this the other day, or actually earlier on. We had a line here also crossing that area where we've seen a decline. Here's a good one. These are all remnants of previous days. A nice decline towards a line, bounce to the upside. So price has not reached any one of these projected ranges just yet. It might not do it. Maybe today's a non-event. Who knows what the Fed's going to be doing? Apparently all traders, well, all traders, I'm excluding myself. But I don't know how they do these surveys, but anyway, there's a sort of an assumption that amongst 90% of surveyed traders, potentially probably from big banks or corporates or hedge funds or whatever, that there might be a soft 25 basis point increase today. Again, I'll keep on hammering on this rate decision, but, you know, in light of these recent turmoil in the banking sector, the Fed's in a really sort of sticky situation here. You know, if they hike the rate too much, then, you know, it might bring some more volatility and fear into the markets, and we could see one hell of a decline. You know, if they sort of, let's say, stick to a 25 basis point, maybe nothing will happen. Or if they don't hike at all, just to try to, you know, calm the fears in the markets, then we might see one hell of a push back upwards. So, I mean, there's only one of those 3 things that could happen in my mind. So again, we'll have to wait and see, and obviously just watch these levels. Like I said, don't really expect much until that news hits in what, an hour, 45 minutes from now. So yeah, just keep an eye on that. Again, I've been talking a lot of these lines and patterns and all that sort of stuff, but that did get broken to the upside on the ES. You know, I kind of majorly follow the ES forward direction, and obviously look at the NQ and the YM as well. I'll do that just next. But before I do go there, let's say I'm completely wrong about this leading diagonal thing, and we do see a sharp decline. Then I think we're going to see a very violent decline. I mean, this is just like me talking right now, because what I'm seeing on the charts also here is what potentially looks like some sort of an ending diagonal. Now, that's if you have to disregard this long wick that we've had here on the 20th. And as you probably know, if you're familiar with patterns, especially with Elliott wave analysis, ending diagonals either happen at the end of 5th waves, or they could happen at the end of corrective waves, i.e. the C waves, giving us a potential A, B, and this just being a C wave, where the C wave traces out as an ending diagonal. All right, so I think this scenario can come into play if price were to break and potentially mark this. If price, and I think in my opinion, would break below today's S2. Now, S2 is at 3,959. I could probably move this up if you want to go draw this actual lower line of the potential. I'm saying potential, guys. It's not 100% sure. Nothing is sure in trading. But if price would then, if you had to replicate these lines, drawing from highs to highs to highs, to lows, disregarding this wick here on a 4-hour, and wait if price then breaks below this lower line, which is currently lying at 3,990, plus minus a few ticks, then that could be an early warning that this is actually some sort of an ending diagonal, and we could see one hell of a decline instead. But again, let's not speculate too much. I always try to have at least a few options in the back of my head. What might I be dealing with? Always not only assume or have how can I say, the word's escaping my head right now. The ego to think that you must be right all the time. Obviously, if you've been trading for any extent of time, the market's always right, and more than often you'll be proven wrong. So for me personally, I need to have a plan A, B, and sometimes a plan C as well. Again, who knows what's going to happen? Just keep an eye on the markets. I wouldn't personally trade during that time. A lot of markets will potentially get affected by today's rate decision, but then again, it could also be a non-event, like I mentioned before. I mean, same thing here on the NQ. Price structure is slightly different. We've already sort of had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave. This is the start now of a move to the upside. Also, sort of, if you want to count the internal waves here, it looks like 3 waves. Looks like 3 waves, except this last one to the upside can't really force a third wave here somewhere. So most of the day, similar to the ES, the NQ opened above today's pivot point at 12,817, nearly reached R1 at 12,957. I think if we do get any spikes, either up or down on both the ES, NQ, and all these other markets, for example, that we could easily see spikes towards R2s or S1s, or whatever the case might be. But to give me direction in a bigger picture, obviously I have to revisit things tomorrow after today's rate decision and see which of those scenarios played out, and then accordingly adjust my bias potentially over the short run, maybe leading into next week and onwards. All right, YM, I think I was saying on Monday, I've been stuck in a pretty large range here. Very volatile one. Price has since broken up to the upside, retested and up pushed higher. Again, price during the overnight session leading into today's afternoon session hovered above today's pivot point at 32,688, and sort of like midway between today's pivot point and R1 at 32,935. Again, not going to make too much predictions here on the YM. Still hanging back to see what happens. Russell, where the YM was sort of like trading sideways, the Russell's been making this sort of slightly lower lows sort of thing, if that makes sense. And has since broken to the upside. Also opened above today's pivot point, 1,789. It's actually a little bit weaker than the others. It's now breaking below. Previous candle closed below that pivot point. So if the RTY or Russell was to continue lower, potentially heading towards 1,770. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens over there. Gold, on the other hand, was an interesting one for a while. I think back in, when was this, the 8th? Yeah, let's just get rid of this. Gold was moving towards a new low. It came within a few ticks of pipping these lows that were seen at the end of Feb, and boom, straight back to the upside. Now, we did expect some sort of support to step in. I think if you go back I think about a month or so, when we started these sessions, I sort of had a target at 1845, where I believe price could move towards. I think it was this zone over here. Now, price did exceed that, but sort of very close. I thought that was sort of an area where a low could materialize, and since price moved to the upside. Again, gold, also a candidate that will definitely, I won't say definitely, will likely be influenced by today's rate decision. Now, I sloped a pitchfork, as you can see here, to the upside. We had previous areas where I marked where we would see resistance, and they were only very small reactions and not much larger, not large ones like I expected. I think the largest ones now obviously taken place at since this high, that was set here on the 20th. And I also showed you this, even though, and this is a real cool thing about market geometry, even though price left the boundaries around this area over here of this pitchfork, quite often they keep on respecting the same angles. So if I were to double up or copy and paste and place it above this lower pitchfork, obviously the same pitchfork, same angles, guess where price found resistance? Right at that median line over there. And this was actually the one I was talking about, not the ES. We also had a projected range high right there where it intersected the upper median line of that pitchfork. I doubled to the upside, and since we've seen a much stronger decline. Now, I was saying, I think on Monday, that I was expecting one. Now we're getting that, and I probably have to stick to what I said. I'm treating what's happening here as potentially corrective in nature. Again, today's Fed decision could throw a spanner in the works. Price only thus far retraced to the 38.2% retracement of this move to the upside. So I think there's still some scope for downside potential here. Again, anything could happen. If the markets collapse further, maybe the gold will continue higher. Just give us these small little pullbacks and continue to show strength to the upside. Unless we get one hell of a decline here and start breaking these median lines to the downside, then I obviously have to start thinking that whatever this was, although very strong in nature, potentially corrective in nature, it just doesn't look like it. It looks very, very, very impulsive. So any sort of further decline we might get, I'm treating as corrective. All right, so price has been hovering below today's pivot point at 1957. We also have this median line here. You see how it's all sort of riding this median line, this dashed one. It broke a little bit below, resistance, 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 trying to break above it. I think if it fails again, we could potentially see a decline to this median line at 1934, potentially even then lower to S1 at 1925. We also have a bit of a confluence between the S2 and today's projected range low, right within this area at like 1904 to about 1907. Now, quite often you'll see during corrections, if it is a correction, obviously you would never know. You have to just assume that you might be dealing with a correction, especially when you've seen strong impulsive behaviors like this. You quite often get declines back towards your center median line of your original pitchfork, which is this line over here. I just quickly want to see if there's a fib level right at that area as well. Just bear with me 1 second. Now, a little bit higher. 50%. Again, this is just today's range. These obviously will have new levels tomorrow. We'll have new levels on Friday. It's all about how price now gets to there. If it does obviously get to there, might have to do this, get there at a later stage, maybe even the 50%. By the time it does get there, did it reach the center median line? Do we have other projected ranges or even the pivot points, you know, all joining together at sort of an area there? And if it does, then potentially a high probability area of support. Again, this could just be, I don't know, this correction might be done. It might not. We'll just have to wait and see how the market and participants obviously react today after all of the Fed stuff's over with. All right, and then we have crude oil. Then I'll almost be done with it, today's analysis session. For those that are new here, this is a good example of how I view the markets in relation to also our levels to lock, but also with what is happening from a pattern perspective, what I think might be a pattern. Now, if you joined me last month, since February, actually, I was thinking we're dealing with a correction to the upside. I actually thought that correction potentially ended here. Look how beautifully it moved into a box that I drew there before price moved into it. We had a strong decline. I was like patting myself on the back, how cool I am, and how accurate I am with my analysis, and that was the end of correction. Just a few seconds afterwards, boom, back to the upside, and then I had to change my mind again. Again, thinking it's corrective, but it could potentially just mean that this was a triple zigzag instead. We had another area up here. I think at that time we had a projected range high. I was looking at, I think, an R1 pivot point resistance area. And I think I also drew, if I'm not mistaken, a channel of some sort up here. Yeah, this is what I did, or something like that. Right into an area of confluence, and to the T, price moved back again. And at this stage, I packed my back again, and I was correct this time around. So you must always try to change your bias. Anything can happen in the markets, but I've been saying for a long time that whatever happened here, although it looks massive on a 4-hour chart, in the bigger picture, crude was moving lower, and I still thought that that correction or this move to the downside was not over just yet. I'm switching back to crude oil quickly. I did say on Monday, I think, expecting a move back to the upside. Yeah, price did start moving to the upside, potentially what looks like sorry, let's get that out again. 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5. If we do get a 5-wave sequence, it's a bit clearer than what I'm seeing at the moment. Then you could potentially get a decline. I'll treat that as potentially corrective, and then another move to the upside. Price opened above today's pivot point at 68.73. Almost made contact with today's R1 at 70.57. So my thinking is that crude oil can still move higher, but then again, supply issues, things with China at the moment. I think today's inventories report showed a little bit of an increase in stock. I quickly glanced at it. I didn't even actually understand what that guy was writing too well there. But, you know, all of these things sort of happens after the fact, after price typically reaches areas that you've, you know, looked at for quite some time. So before I end today's session, I was saying that I'm looking at crude oil potentially just correcting higher. That could be the case. So if it does move higher, whether it's a correction or not, we got this low median line here that's acted as support so many times before, which could now act as resistance. And that's currently lying today at 72.09. So be aware of that figure. 72.09 is not too far above today's price. R2 71.60, and we've got a projected range high at 72.84. Doesn't mean it's going to tick it perfectly in reverse. You might get a spike up, could potentially act as resistance. And again, maybe crude also gets affected by today's rate decision. So I think it'll be a good idea just to hang back a little bit today. I'm definitely going to, and then I'll be watching the markets, probably in my bed by then, because it's going to be late or later in the after, well, evening my time, and then recap things tomorrow, see where the markets are in relations to our levels, and as well, you know, once the dust is settled, maybe there was no dust or won't be any dust kicked up, we'll just have to reassess things and take things from there again. All right, so that concludes my analysis. I see there are a few questions coming in here, Nate.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Frank actually had a great question for you. I'll just read it for the group's sake. He says, Richard, when do you take a trade? At the trend lines and median of the pitchfork? So I know you definitely have plenty you can show us here.
Nate should be pretty well versed in that. I wrote entire courses about this.
Absolutely. I almost took the question for you.
Now, typically what you want to do, Frank, is I'm trying to obviously look at what trend's doing, right? Let's say crude oil might be an example. I didn't draw any pitchforks on here just yet, but let's see. Price making lower lows, lower highs, right? So whenever you get a correction, then, or a move opposite to a trend, then I'll assume first off that it could be corrective in nature, and that it will potentially end at some stage, and then the price would continue lower, in this case in a downward trend, right? But what I do with pitchforks is I'm actually trying to identify areas where a correction might end, assuming again that I might be dealing with a correction, right? So my go-to pitchfork setting would be, especially with corrections, is the shift pitchfork setting. I'll, for example, look at an area price moves into a low, it starts moving counter trend, it starts moving lower again, fails to break that low and starts moving higher again. And what I'll do is I'll slope using the 3 most prominent anchor points, a pitchfork to the upside, although this one is pretty flat in nature. It's a shift pitchfork setting, and then identify where my upper median line in this case would be, where quite often your most common corrections are ABCs. Let me just take the snap mode off now again. Are ABCs. And if you were to slope a pitchfork upward, you go from start, assuming it's an A, assuming it's a B. And your C wave would typically travel the same distance as your A wave did, and they typically end at the upper median line, or in this case, an upper red warning line. So you want to identify those areas prior to price getting there. And then if you see some sort of reaction from it, you look at, indications, RSI going from an overbought situation to oversold situation, maybe on a lower time frame, whatever your favorite time frame might be. And then, or look for reversal candlestick patterns. And then that acts as my additional confirmation that price is getting ready, and that potentially that area identified is acting as resistance, and that might be the end of a trend. So that in very short is what I'll do. This one on the ES, if you look at the bigger picture, I quite like sloping a pitchfork in direction of a trend, in this case downwards. Then I want to wait for a move back to the upside, assuming that it's corrective in nature, and then slope a pitchfork into the direction of what I assume is a correction, right? In this case, up. I've got another one sloping up, so it's opposite from this bigger one over a shorter term. And then we have confluence between the downward sloping line and the upward sloping line. Identify an area. You see a reaction from there, that will be my entry. In this case, had one hell of a decline from there. I didn't trade this, but just a really good example of what it is I do with pitchforks. So yeah, my questions are, you can, a lot of times, for example, to answer your question before I see if there's any others, let's say you were late on this and you think that was the end of this move to the upside, price going to continue low. Quite often you see a break, price breaks lower, and then you see a retest of the centimedian line, for example, and then a continuation. So at that stage, you can then use that area as an additional entry area, maybe add onto a position, maybe trade options or whatever the case might be. So that's just a hopefully a decent explanation of what I do with my pitchforks.
Awesome. Well,
hopefully that helped out, Frank.
Yeah, let us know, Frank, if you had any follow-up questions about that or anything in particular that interests you, you wanted to see more. We do have a couple of minutes. But I'll tell you, Richard, it is great to see the pitchforks. It's just a certain element
thank you.
Of both nostalgia and then just, I've always loved the pitchforks and what you do with them. So
yeah. No, they work well. I mean, a lot of people complain there's too many lines on my chart, but hopefully it's sort of clearing up what I'm trying to do here, and you're actually looking past all that clutter at the moment.
Sure.
Because they also really act as really good sort of price magnets as well. Give you a bit of like forecasting power where price might move towards, etc., etc. So yeah, any other question, guys? You're welcome, Frank.
Yeah, please feel free to fire away in the chat. And again, yeah, as you start to understand what, these lines represent and how all the components came together, when you look at that chart, it's a totally different sort of understanding. It doesn't look just like lines flying. You start to see the market structure reflected there, which is phenomenal.
And there's another one, correction. Where does it end? Upper median line. Price moves lower. You can go look at so many different examples. I don't know about this one. Let's have a look at that. This case, slightly over the centimedian line. That was not a nice clear setup. But you can go look at this over and over and over again, especially with zigzags. They tend to end at the end of upper median lines or upper red warning lines, etc., etc., etc. It's really pretty cool to see. You even get symmetry between, let's say, this leg to the upside. Where's my FIP extensions? If this was an A. In this case, the 4-hour actually made the A and the B, if that makes sense. So you probably have to switch to a smaller time frame to actually see the internal waves here. That's a beautiful example of where your C wave travels the same distance as your A wave. So symmetry in range, as well as symmetry in angle between your A waves and your C waves in single zigzags. And then there's different ways to treat every single sort of correction that it is. I can go on about this for years, but yeah, it's a little bit out of the scope of today's session, but maybe we can talk about that sometime.
Certainly, yeah. And guys and gals, please feel free again if you had any follow-up questions or anything outside of this, these sessions. Do feel free to go on our website, grab that phone number, shoot us an email. And if you have questions specific to Richard, just let our support guys know. We'll make sure that is handled, and we'll even bring that into the next session. So excellent. Frank, yeah, absolutely. We're glad you enjoyed that. I think it's safe to say the pitchfork is going to be, making a cameo here and there as we continue through these sessions.
Look, it's not just about pitchforks as well. We obviously have to look at the levels to lock, right?
Sure.
Also you need some other confirmation. This gives you an idea where price might move towards support resistance. Quite often, I talk a lot about confluence. Now, do we have those R1 levels to lock levels at these lines? Are there confluence areas? And that sort of strengthens the idea that you might see support or resistance step in as well.
Excellent. Cool. Well, we'll leave just a little room here for any other questions before we wrap. It looks like we are going to wrap this up in just a couple minutes. The only thing that I was going to show you all today was just what's on the Ninjacators calendar. We do have a live event this afternoon. So let me go ahead and take over the screen share very quickly here, and I'll show you what we've got cooking. So if you're able to see this screen decently, it looks like if you're on YouTube, you may not be able to see this. So I will be dropping a link here in the chat. So this is, if you have not attended any of these sessions just yet, we've been working on what we call our robot lab. You've probably heard some buzz about it. Our founder, Christian, was very closely involved in the development and the use and the optimization of our robot lab software. So it is a fully diversified portfolio of trading robots. They had a great year trading these last year, sustained success throughout 2022, primarily shorts, to not many people's surprise. With the year that we had. But the success continues into 2023. And so today, Christian, as well as our buddy Craig, who was supposed to be joining us today, he will be with us next week. He's involved with this very closely as well. Those guys will be throwing this session here today to take a look under the hood, to show you their performance results, and then just to show you all of these bots, what they can do, and to take any questions you may have about that. So, and full transparency, obviously they are going to be showing you the Robot Lab product at the end of this webinar and an opportunity to buy that, of course. But, if you're just curious, if you want to come learn more, they're also giving away a free robot just for showing up. So pro tip, you do have to stay in the webinar, hang out a few minutes for it to register that you're there, and you'll get this, the S&P 500 Income Strategizer, absolutely free. So we do encourage you to check this out here, guys. And you can see I do have the link in the chat. Frank says, great stuff. He's already a member. That's awesome to hear. So I'm sure you know Craig. You've gotten to know Craig quite well. Craig will be with us next week to show us a little deeper look and some of his very own performance results trading the Robot Lab. But again, we just very much encourage you to come check it out. It's free. It's going to be right after market close, so 4:15 Eastern time. So if you just hit that link there in the chat, you'll come straight to this page. And yeah, also have an option here if you want text reminders, you can grab that. So please let us know if you had any questions about that, or again, feel free to reach out to support outside of these sessions. But we'd love to see you here today at 4:15 Eastern for our Robot Lab live event hosted by Christian, our founder. So please definitely check it out. And it looks like we're getting close to wrapping up here today. So I'm just going to go ahead and kill this screen share, give you guys one last chance to ask any questions you may have. And if not, we're going to head out into the afternoon. We'll brace for this Fed rate decision here at 2 p.m. And again, we'll have lots of updates tomorrow depending on how that goes. So we encourage you to jump back in tomorrow, noon Eastern, for another session of Profits at Noon. Excellent. Well, looks like everyone's sated and settled. So I think we're safe to go ahead and wrap this up. We like to do our little parting wisdom as well as potentially a terrible joke. As we head into our afternoons and Richard into his evening. So Richard, I'll give you the shot at any parting wisdom or anything, any final notes ahead of this Fed rate decision, and I'll hold off on my terrible joke until you're done.
Not really. I think I said most of it. Just be careful around that time. A lot of markets can be affected by this. Who knows? Maybe we see liftoff. Maybe we see another crash. I don't know. Stranger things have happened in the markets, or you expect the worst and then nothing happens, whatever. So just be careful. We'll pick things up again tomorrow and have a look at what happened. And this time have a bit of the gift of hindsight to start formulating what might be ahead for the markets recover.
Roger that. Sound advice, and we'll save our terrible joke for tomorrow since we're going into that Fed rate decision. You'll have something else to look forward to. So thank you, everyone, again for joining us. Thank you for spending your time with us. And thank you, Richard, as always, for the very insightful analysis that you have provided for us. Jackie wants to know if this is recorded so you can catch up later. It is being recorded. If you do not receive any sort of email from Zoom automatically to view this recording, please reach out to our support or give us a call, send us an email, and we'll make sure you have that. Alternatively, you can also find it on YouTube later today. So if you don't get something like that, you're able to grab it and hang on to it from Zoom directly, reach out to us or just cruise on over to the Ninjacators YouTube and you should be able to find that session. Absolutely. You're very welcome, Jackie. So thank you all again. We're going to go ahead and wrap up today. We hope to see you tomorrow at Thursday at noon Eastern time for another Profits at Noon session. And again, dropping that link one more time in the chat as we head out, but please join us today at 4:15 Eastern after market close for the Robot Lab webinar. Christian has lots of cool stuff to show you there. So awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll see you tomorrow and be good in the meantime. Bye-bye.
Awesome, guys. Have a good one. See you tomorrow and stay safe out there. Take care and goodbye.